picture. It's a known fact. I grew up in a Muslim household. This is something we've known. But as soon as you used to critically start questioning it, that was he really 57 years old and she was 6 years old, you are not allowed to go into these taboo topics.
This tailor didn't open his shop for 6 days because he lived in fear of what would happen, and the first day he does this heinous act occurs.
This is a Rushdie style fatwa on a lady. Even if tomorrow perpetrators are put behind bars, she is going to be running for her life.
In that case, these two individuals have been immensely successful. Not only have they put their propaganda video out, they managed to kill a Hindu, and they've also been able to silence major press outlets in the country.
Gulf countries are not interested in the Indian Muslims at all.
Saurav is based in the UK. He is an author, columnist, and Arshia ji is a very prominent voice these days on Twitter and on social media, and she's somewhat of a very, very reasonable rationalist, if I may add it that way.
Thank you
Good to
for
meet
the
you.
introduction. I think Saurav
Thank
is
you
more
so much,
experienced than
Arshia
me.
ji
Saurav?
and Saurav, for joining me today. I wish we had this conversation on a better occasion, but unfortunately, even yesterday I was out on a physical shoot the whole day. I had no internet connection, and then when I came back home later in the night, I had my dinner. I switched on social media. I saw Twitter, and I read about the news about what happened in Udaipur. Extremely chilling. You cannot believe that this sort of a crime happens in 21st century. That forced me to ask, do we live in the 21st century, or rather do these people live in the 21st century? And everything was recorded, it was taped, threats were issued, the police acted to fail to act in the first place. Latest news reports actually say that Kanhaiya had approached the police, and then rather an FIR was filed against him for spreading communal hatred, and today we see the consequences of it. Arshia.
Well, the reports that I'm getting, the information that is coming through is the neighbors were involved, and this is where I come in as a voice. Uh, I think the neighbor, somebody Nazim or somebody, yes, he had gone to the police. He was receiving death threats and all, just for putting up support for Nupur. Now, I don't need to go back into how it all started, but I'm still very, very angry about the edited clip that a certain cabal put out. Everybody's forgotten that Taslim Rahmani was speaking actually, and he had baited Nupurji. And she retorted, which is perfectly fine for anybody, who has a belief system and they feel offended by anybody attacking their religion. So this in this whole thing, this thing has been forgotten that it was a bait trap. And Islamists, political Islam, fundamentalists, fanatics, they're very finicky about anything misconstrued or even conflated and exaggerated, especially in India. So this is what is making me angry, and I'm still waiting for the ulama to issue any statement to say that this whole sartan se juda, this whole attitude, this whole mentality surrounding the blasphemy culture that we have in the Muslim community. I'm still waiting for condemnation for that. Yes, prominent voices, influencers have put out customary, obligatory rhetoric. It doesn't impress me. We don't have the numbers, and the laugh reactions are much more in numbers than the condemnation. Very unfortunate circumstances. He was a tailor. I understand the workforce. I am a part of the workforce. The daily grind and everything. And to say that as a customer they came in and they've been recording it, there was an intentional video recorded, first of all, which is a typical jihadi thing. The intention is laid out for everybody, and then egging others to take on the task of beheading anybody else they feel. Then the video itself, and finally, brazenly boasting what they had done. Completely barbaric. Everybody condemns it. I think everybody on the planet must be condemning it. But the outrage that the other side, takes up whenever there is a lynching problem or wherever there is a law and order situation, I don't see that same condemnation coming. And that is why I've
Right.
been vocal on Twitter. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. As soon as Nupur Sharma's incident happened, without going into the politics of what happened and the usual rhetoric, the fact is the BJP suspended her, and there was an outrage from a section of BJP supporters. They felt that it was really unfair, but regardless, there was some action taken, just for the sake of argument. And right now, we see this incident happening, and even the apologists are not actually giving some sort of a heartfelt condemnation of the whole incident, but rather it's just a normal rhetorical statement that they put out that okay, it's very unfortunate that this happened, it shouldn't have happened, but it has nothing to do with Islam. These people don't have anything to do with Islam at all, Saurav.
Yes, I mean, India and all lovers of freedom of speech and expression must be feeling particularly raw and numb today because this was a very deliberate, concerted attack, which, as Arshia ji has just mentioned, was set up deliberately to terrify everyone. It wasn't just a killing, it was broadcast. There were videos prior to the event which made abundantly clear what the intentions of these Islamist thugs was. They even threatened Narendra Modi ji as well, and chided those Islamists who weren't willing to go and kill other Hindus. They actually shamed them for saying, "If you don't do what we are suggesting you do, you're not Muslim." So this was a deliberately provocative act that was incited for what? Just expressing opinion on social media. What makes this particularly numbing and terrifying is the fact that this tailor didn't open his shop for 6 days because he lived in fear of what would happen. And the first day he does this, this heinous act occurs. So it is blasphemy by, in this case, social media likes. It is blasphemy simply for this community deciding upon itself to decide what is law and order, what is right, and what must be taken. For them, an apology is never sufficient. And it's remarkable that even the Indian press is holding back from calling out this act of Islamist terror for what it is. Even now, with the majority BJP government 8 years down the line, they cannot call it what it is. And that says a lot, not just about Indian society and the political environment, but globally as well, whether it's in London,
Right.
whether it's in the States. The powers that be and the prevailing orthodoxy simply cannot call out Islamist terror for what it is. And that doesn't bode well for the future at all.
Right. If we're talking about small time activists or YouTubers like me, we may actually be intimidated to a certain extent because you do not have a lot of institutional support. So, in that sense, but one of the biggest dailies in India, I'm not going to name them, called these people as customers in inverted commas. I think that can be the biggest insult. And Saurav, we were also speaking about this attack that happened just a few days ago on a Pride parade somewhere
Yep,
in Scandinavia. And even that, not a blink of an eye anywhere in the international media. It was perhaps,
indeed.
put down somewhere in the footnote.
Indeed, every major broadsheet in the United Kingdom has not covered that story as prominently as it should have. There's been headlines about the royal family, about Boris Johnson, about anything under the sun, and towards the back of all of the major dailies, there is just a brief mention of what happened in Oslo. And bear in mind, in England, this is the country where an MP was stabbed multiple times by an Islamist, and that wasn't talked about. This is the country where an individual tried to bomb a Queen's Jubilee celebration, and his bomb activated instead outside of a hospital by mistake. But because nobody was killed, it wasn't important. Again, this Islamist threat is it's deliberately downplayed, and the fact it's happening in India is remarkable. The two customers headline, which you spoke of, Sharan, is terrifying. Is this how we are going to describe Islamist terror going forward? Can we not even name it? In that case, these two individuals have been immensely successful. Not only have they put their propaganda video out, they managed to kill a Hindu, and they've also been able to silence major press outlets in the country. What is this? What are we going to do now?
And all of this happened, interestingly, when there are two coincidences. One, when we are talking about the attack on the Pride Parade in Oslo, there was a Pride Parade somewhere in Chennai, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm recollecting it rightly, where one of the posters funnily said, "There is no saffron in my rainbow." And these people go on to, attack the BJP and the RSS and anybody who leans right of center, essentially saying that we are an intolerant people. And even now, one of the reasons that the government cited for the suspension of Nupur Sharma is that there is diplomatic complicalities involved here. We do not want to unnecessarily upset a lot of our partners in West Asia. And this is how geopolitics is, this is how diplomacy is done. Fair enough. But all this is happening when Modi is in the Middle East, Arshaji.
Sharon, the thing is that everybody keeps forgetting the fact that she was just quoting hadith, the scriptures, you know. So if everybody is condemning what she said, they're all condemning Sahih Bukhari. I see people calling him the retort as vile, and she was speaking in a very derisive manner. Is Sahih Bukhari vile? There are some uncomfortable truths of Islam, and this is where my voice comes in that Islam has to open up. Like Saurav said, you know, they're not even calling it Islamic terror, they're not even calling it Islamism. And this is something that Nawaz, you know, he coined the term regressive left, and he says that which cannot be named, like you know, Voldemort and Harry Potter.
Mhm.
You don't want to name it, and unless you name a problem, you cannot do anything about it. That's been the basic problem in India, which is facing terrorism since the past 30, 40 years. Uh, the Middle East has opened up. It has realized geopolitically it has to recognize Israel, you know, the big Satan. And slowly I see Qatar falling in line. I see UAE is, of course, leading. And even for that matter, Iran is being brought online with it. So this good friendship with India that we have, and which the Prime Minister has cultivated over the years, of course, there had to be some sort of knee-jerk damage control, but everybody forgot in this that it's the scripture, it's a known fact. I grew up in a Muslim household. This is something we've known. But as soon as you used to critically start questioning it, that was he really 57 years old and she was 6 years old, you are not allowed to go into these taboo topics. Or the mullahs, you know, they have their own way of what I call obfuscation, what the late Hamid Alwai had caught in the 1970s, Muslim obscurantism. You know, so we grow up with this. Now there is a revisionism happening, that she was not actually 9, she was 19. Okay, everything there. But everybody is forgetting what actually happened. You know, Tasneem Rahmani beating her, she retorting, she obviously is going to retort because you know you're attacking her religion. And if you expect the same respect for Islam, you have to do it for other religions as well, right? Now, many people are saying that India capitulated. Now, diplomatically, I understand the suspension. I understand all of it, but this is a Rushdie style fatwa on a lady. Even if tomorrow perpetrators are put behind bars, she is going to be running for her life, you know, all her life. This is not the life anybody would wish upon anybody, even the enemies.
Right.
So this whole thing which grew up, you know, we have Zubair in custody and everything. This whole cabal that I call the anti-India cabal that we have, they were trying to browbeat India to, capitulate for the rights of minorities, not realizing the fact that the Gulf countries are not interested in the Indian Muslims at all. They are going to look after their business. They too do not want to spoil their this friendship and their ties with India. We are a big market for them too. Uh, so everything was kind of brushed away as I see it. Uh, but this doesn't help solve the problems. Tomorrow there's going to be another tailor, another carpenter. He is also going to have Muslim neighbors. This does a big disservice for Indian Muslims who are just trying to live their lives, and in an ordinary way.
Hmm.
So the Gulf countries, to mobilize the Gulf countries like this, just based on a manipulated, edited video, this is diabolical. I can say that.
Yeah. And look how time turns. I mean, yesterday we had the entire cabal actually calling for Zubair's release. And we had a lot of interesting statements even come out from several political leaders as well. And in just one day, the entire situation has turned against him. And every time we have such conversations, I keep asking my guests just to get different perspectives on how Islam can be reformed, can be rationalized in a manner. And I think there have been hopeful events as such in the past as well. But don't you think there are too many distractions like these actually coming where, continuously it's been upset because some or the other fringe element is getting involved in such a manner and basically upsetting the entire uh, reform debate for that matter. So, is there any hope that this can actually happen, or do we need to accept
First
that
thing is
this is
to
going to be a
name the
problem?
problem. You have to name the problem, and France leads in it. It is calling it Islamism. And I think Saurav can better shed light on it, all the reforms that are happening. First thing the governments have to recognize, there is an Islamism problem. You have to name it. The headlines have to come out with Islamism, political Islam. Saurav, what do you think?
Yes, thank you,
Yeah, in
Archie.
that
So
sense, actually, it's true because the Indian press does not name it because we are supposed to be the torch bearers of democracy, of free speech, and if we are not going to name it, you cannot expect the
We
common man in
still
any
are the
civilization
torch
to know
bearers of democracy because we have an anti-India cabal thriving in India. They have careers, nobody's
it.
arresting them. Zubair got
Yeah,
arrested because of 295A. It's a constitutional law that we have. And now it has been found he's been booked under 204, destruction of evidence. So this is all legal that is happening. Otherwise, we are a thriving
yeah.
democracy. I mean, I
Right.
think this is the only country which allows its dissenters and sedition and traitors and treason to flourish. Right? We're still a thriving democracy, and that is
I
how
think
it should be
ultimately,
basically. But right to life, that's the first thing that needs to be upheld. And the
yeah,
ulama need to come out with that now. The right to life supersedes any religious law anywhere in the world. Right to life. After that,
right.
right to freedom of expression. This was Kanhaiya Lal. He wanted to stand with Nupur. Absolutely his right to do it. The jihadi punks had no business taking away anybody's life. There should be capital punishment for it. I have a few Muslim voices calling out for hanging. But then this is one aspect of it. The core problem is still there. The culture around blasphemy, the culture around taking offense from a cartoon, from a book, from a meme, from a dialogue in a movie, from a poster, this has to be done away with, right?
Indeed, the
Yes.
more the blasphemy is not tackled, the greater the occurrence of a two-tier legal system. We are already seeing in the UK there are many Sharia courts which the press is not keen to report on, but yet these systems are in place. So if blasphemy is allowed to instill itself and codify itself through action, then this is something we need to be worried about. Sharon, you mentioned about debate. Within the UK, in fact, there's been a major spotlight on the Shia versus Sunni debate around a film called Our Lady of Heaven about Fatima, which some radical Islamists managed to get banned from certain cinemas. And these cinemas buckled to Islamic pressure, withdrew the film. But what really this explored was a sheer exemplification and sheer study of the scriptures, which went against a hardcore Orthodox Sunni interpretation. And yet, that explored, that really laid bare the many schisms and areas that need to be explored within Islam, because this debate is still being played out, yet only one voice prevails, which is the hardcore fundamentalist voice. That cannot be in the UK, it cannot be in India. And with one final point is that why is it when there is an excerpt from the Hadith, from the Sunnah, from the Quran, or an Islamist preacher, that they then say this is an excerpt without context? So how dare you then blame Islam as a whole? Yet when Nupur Sharma's quote is taken out of context as a deliberate excerpt, somehow this is talking about a Hindu Rashtra, about Deshbhakts. Tell me, if we are living in a Hindu Rashtra, how could have this terror act in Udaipur have been committed so brazenly in broad daylight? How is that even possible?
Fair point, Saurav. Fair point. In fact, it's amusing for me that there are 56 plus Muslim majority countries. How does it matter if there is one Hindu majority country? How does it matter,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Absolutely, and just at the point when you think people would actually recognize this crime for what happened, recognize it for the roots of it, people are actually blaming the fundamentalism that is being spread by Mr. Modi and the BJP as a reason for the entire polarization between these communities.
Which is not true. I happen to live in Uttar Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh has gained a lot from the policies of the Modi government. It's about daily lives, roads and tap water and toilets and LPG cylinders, and this is something that ordinary folks want. Healthcare systems improved massively, a lot of less corruption, cutting away with the middleman. I'm a single parent, and for me, online this UPI transactions, it's made life so easy. So and it's not discriminatory. They're not going around and saying who's a Hindu family and which is a Muslim family. It's for everybody, right? There are so many schemes for girls, for girl child, and for the women, for women entrepreneurs. So India is progressing immensely. Life has become so easy, and that's what they're working for, on the ground. But this whole cabal, and this happens mostly online, because if you talk to the common person on the street, they are perfectly fine with the BJP government. They voted for the BJP government. There are clippings with the Muslim women saying that, of course, this government banned the triple talaq, instant triple talaq, which happens to have been banned in Pakistan of all the places, and we had still not done it. And why shouldn't we vote for this? After all, you vote for a government which is going to work for the people, right? So that's the basic principle of democracy. Why shouldn't we do it? But then you have this whole, ecosystem which goes and creates this divisive politics. And this is what I'm up against. It has to be inclusive. India is a country. Our Indic heritage is made up both of Hindus and Muslims. I am as much a citizen of this country, and it has accepted me. I am a living
Right.
embodiment of the idea of India. I'm from Kashmir, fully integrated into the country. And after the nullification of Article 370, my state is thriving. It's a union territory now, and youngsters, the new generation, we've been able to save it from the radical Islam. Now we need to secure the country, and this
Yeah.
divisive politics is not going to do it. You have to name the problem. You have to name it. I am critical of the government as well. They're still kind of hesitant and appeasing, but follow France. France has done it. I think there was a tweet by Mr. Haris Sultan, I believe, on Twitter that Kanhaiya Lal should be given a state funeral. I agree. I agree. Absolutely.
I remember when the triple talaq decision was actually taken, and a lot of Muslim women actually came out in support of the BJP and Mr. Modi. And in fact, I think it was very interesting to observe the demographics slowly change in terms of the voter turnout as well. A lot of Muslim women were actually reported to vote for the BJP, and this was a
Yes.
miracle. You couldn't. This was unexpected. Nobody actually predicted that such a phenomenon can actually happen. And this has been reflected in the recent by-elections in Rampur and Azamgarh as well, which essentially are the secular bastions where the Muslims are a majority. But the BJP did manage to win, and this is all amid the bulldozer Baba campaign that is going
Ordinary
on.
Muslims want jobs, they want tap water, they want toilets, they want roads, they want malls, they want facilities, just like any other family in India. And they are going to vote for the government which is going to do it. The bulldozer politics is again another fallacy that they keep doing. Anybody who writes the house is bulldozed. And there have been more Hindu homes raised than Muslim homes. The message was clear cut by the Yogi government that there's going to be no writing. Any destructive bill is going to come out from you people. And this is not discriminatory at all. It's following law and order.
Yeah. And
Exactly. Where
this
were the
was seen.
international
I read some.
headlines?
Yes,
Yes,
Saurav.
Saurav?
Yeah, where were the headlines when India went to Afghanistan to help Muslims who have been afflicted by this terrible earthquake? Where were the headlines when the modifications of the CAA now allows Afghan refugees fleeing from the destruction of their homes to now be able to find safe harbor in India? Would this be happening in a Hindu Rashtra? Why is this not amplified? So, the talk of toolkits always sounds of conspiracy, but we have seen the toolkit being deployed now with a narrative shift around Zubair's imprisonment, sorry, his arrest, and around this terror act as well. And it is nauseatingly predictable.
Like Sharan said that we are small time YouTubers, and we are doing a bit. The pushback narratives time has come now.
Yeah,
There were headlines, but again they were on small news portals and everything that India is helping Afghanistan and all. My special
Yeah.
concern is Afghanistan because of the US leaving Afghanistan. All the weapons left behind are making their way into Kashmir, and
yeah,
Kashmir is also suffering from narco terrorism. The opium which is making its way there. So I am having a Kashmir Urta problem, right now happening in front of my eyes. It's going the Punjab
Yeah.
way. So yeah, but the pushback narrative is happening. People are coming up, and I'm glad to see many more Indians becoming very aware of how much they need to secure the country. Pardon my language, but there have been useful idiots on the Hindu sides also, left liberals usually, and that has to stop. That has to stop because you're not helping the Muslims also. The Muslims need to come up. The Islam needs to open up. And going by the left liberal logic, the Sacher committee report, which says that Muslims are not into the electoral process at all, well, they have to, and they have to come forward. And the first thing is naming the problem. They have to name the jihadis amongst them. The ulama have to come up with strong condemnations. Right to life is the first thing, and country stands first about any religion, above any religion.
But anything that is done in favor of the Muslim community as a whole is again portrayed in a negative light. For example, even if since we are talking about triple talaq, I remember some of the media reports actually saying, "Oh, this is a very very meticulous plan to divide the average Muslim family," and now the Muslim men are against the BJP and the women are in favor. I mean, what do you
Sharan,
have to be
Saurav
saying?
used the word toolkit. Saurav is absolutely right in using the word toolkit. And please understand, the narrative is controlled by just a few elite cabal. The narrative is not in the hands of the people, the people of the country. That's ordinary Muslims and Hindus. That's what we are trying to change. That's what the pushback narrative has to do. Like Mr. Modi took out the middlemen, in the farm laws also, he was trying to do the same thing. Same way, the narrative has to be put back into the people. And we cannot, international portals always pick up this anti, India headlines and all that. That has to change. And I
Right.
believe it's happening slowly and steadily.
Yeah, but a lot of the countries have actually used their national power to get this on a bargain. Now, nobody in Hollywood makes an anti-China film or where they're making fun of anything to do with China. Nobody speaks about Xinjiang. Even in the Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan, he goes on record from time to time, at least once a week, and says that no, what they're doing it right. They know what they're doing. Even some of our ministers have visited Xinjiang, and there's nothing actually to be scared about. We trust the Chinese completely, and that's the amount of power that the Chinese actually display when it comes to how they control international institutions outside of China as well, sort of.
Absolutely. You know what? A lot of things can be said about China and the CCP, but I will say this. I take my hat off to their geostrategic strategy around the world. It has been in place for decades, slowly built to raise the profile and prominence of the sovereignty of that nation. Now, some can say that they have devious plans, but look what they're doing. They're just trying to position themselves as a preeminent nation in their sphere of influence. And they know that that doesn't just mean the South Asia Seas or South Asia, but it can be international as well. So whether it's about getting the finest minds in foreign universities, funding their own movie system, or funding American films, or creating ingenious new inventions, they understand that importance. Most recently, for example, in China, in the CCP has integrated within China the educational system that Hong Kong was a colony, that it was never originally British. Can you imagine the Indian education system talking about their own history so brazenly? They wouldn't. The fact that China can do this and is not ashamed of it is something to be proud of. Now, India is getting there very, very slowly, but they are still afraid of being able to position themselves and the strength of their history. I mean, Gandhi will always be a
Right.
hero, but Bose will always be someone who is a bit suspect. Until we get to the point where we are proud of our heroes and our culture, we can only admire China from afar because China understands that they don't need to be the doormat for the West. They can assert themselves, and to their credit, they have done that. So why can't Bharat do the same?
And
Yeah,
I think it's very
I'm not sure.
unfortunate. I'm sorry. I think it's very
Yeah.
unfortunate, Sorrow, that we have this difference with China. We are two great civilizations, and
Mhm.
we could integrate into the Eurasian. What is happening now? Eurasia is integrating. We could give a strong pushback to the Western imperialism. We are still
Yeah,
decolonizing. We're still at the stage of decolonizing, and it's
yeah.
very unfortunate that we have this border clashes with China. I hope we can
Mhm.
get over this. I think this is the only fault line that we have between two great civilizations.
Yeah,
We could learn from each other, and we could present a united force against Islamic terrorism.
absolutely.
I
I
am not
think
in
it
favor
takes.
of the Uyghur treatment, but something
Yeah,
or the other needs to be done. That is, equally being condemned, but they have it under control, and
yeah.
maybe we could exchange ideas on how to tackle our Islamism problem. So it's very
Mm,
unfortunate that we are not friends. I hope that we are friends in the future. Two great civilizations of the East.
I agree. I think China has decolonized its own minds long before India has. That's a big part of the problem. sometimes it will take a few generations, unfortunately, to decolonize. We are still at that stage with British imperialism because it is so manifest in the mind of Indians. It will
Yeah.
perhaps take another generation. Let's hope it does. But in the meantime, we can only admire China's fortitude in that respect.
Agreed.
So since
Agreed.
you were also mentioning about how our history syllabus has to reflect uh, events in its truest form, look at what happened in Karnataka. If you've been following the news here, basically there was a pushback from the Hindu groups here in Karnataka. They said that no, Tipu Sultan was a tyrant and he needs to be portrayed that way. And the truest history of what he actually did needs to be taught, and the children will themselves understand. But then there was a pushback again from these radical left groups, and they gave up. Now they're correcting everything that these people have been asking for, asking revisions for. So I think it's just that there is a non-commitment when it comes to holding their ground. There is perhaps an intention to do something right, but again, whenever there is a pushback, there is a certain amount of cowardice that's shown to an extent.
This is what I wanted to bring attention to. It's because we still have the old vestiges of the old establishment. We still have left bastions, and it's going to take some time to get back our, universities and colleges and academia and uh, all domains. It's because they are so firmly embedded. This is 70 years, 7 decades of leftism, socialism, dead philosophies, which have no place anywhere in the world now. For that matter, even China is capitalistic. That's your prime example there. Just the neighbor, which used to be communist. The long leap forward and everything. It's all gone now. And the Indian leftists have this propensity to hold on to dead horses and beat them, till days to come. So this old establishment, even in the bureaucracy, this is what stops us, 5 steps ahead and then 10 steps back. But we can't stop. We need to, our leap forward, India's leap forward into the 21st century. I don't think anything can change it. We've just overtaken UK as in economy. And I think the leadership is good. I think the leadership is focused now. But yes, these social fault lines, these are vestiges of partition, and it's something that we'll never be able to get over. Intergenerational trauma is very difficult to come over with. But as Saurav also mentioned, that China has been able to successfully decolonize itself, and we need to learn from that. We need to.
And I think there is a obsessive compulsion of projecting certain historical icons as a means of political branding as well. I remember speaking to Anuj Dhar about Subhash Chandra Bose and a lot of the theories that are involved, and he said that one of the common factors to which the left ecosystem actually clings on to is the fact that Gandhi was a useful tool for branding, which is why even the BJP does not completely disown him, or rather be more sympathetic to other icons of the freedom movement like Bhagat Singh or Subhash Chandra Bose for that matter,
Sardar.
Sardar Patel.
Yeah, I think Gandhi is the convenient um, imperialist. He's the convenient freedom fighter, because the British would have been very happy. Have as many hunger strikes as you want. Eventually, you will die. That was basically their policy. To them, that was far more preferable to someone like Savarkar or to Bose, who actually posited a genuine threat. The INA was a genuine threat. The Indian naval mutiny just before the war was a genuine threat. Gandhi was not. Since we're talking about Gandhi, very interestingly, here in the UK, at this time, at the National Theatre, there is a play about Godse, and it's performing very well. And it is a complete whitewashed left wing propaganda piece about Hindu fundamentalism, about what Godse was like, and about what Savarkar was like. And that is why it is so easy to hold out Gandhi as the preferable, anti-colonization force, because he is brand. He's all about image. He's all about brand. The dangerous individuals who can actually promote change are the ones who are being buried in history. That is the way the British would like it and the West would like it. But it's up to us to promote those heroes. Which is why when you see, the books on Savarkar doing so well now, and these heroes being promoted today, that was unthinkable previously, and the fact that they are, that the more people are understanding their legacy is a commendable effort. And so that's why the literature and the arts and education is one of the means that India can use to reposition itself and not to always think through the lens of Gandhi. Because, you can't win. Gandhi is either the nice, cuddly anti imperialist or he's a racist who hated black people. So the left will attack him either way. So why not promote our real heroes?
I agree. I
Absolutely.
agree, Saurav. In fact, the 21st century is all about stripping down our heroes. Mother Teresa is not so saintly anymore.
Yeah,
Churchill, the Bengal famine. Christopher Columbus actually wiped out an entire civilization. So yes, that's what the 21st century is all about. And I'm glad we are making inroads into technology and the internet. And hopefully, Elon Musk is going to take over Twitter someday. And yes, I agree. I mean, I have always heard Veer Savarkar as demonized, and but when you actually sit down and read Vikram Sampath's book, and you realize that where was all this history, and what have we done to this person,
yeah,
and you realize the extent to how much you were living in a matrix. It makes you very angry that certain facts were kept from you just because of a certain cabal of historians sitting and they had their own worldview.
yeah.
And keep reading about Alauddin Khilji, and then you keep reading about Akbar the Great, whereas the Vijayanagara Empire, I don't have much knowledge about that. I'm just discovering all this great history that we have. So yes, I believe 21st century is all about stripping down the heroes and bringing up the real heroes forward. Yeah, I agree.
You call me a skeptic, but the first time when I actually heard other narratives about Gandhi or Subhash Chandra Bose, for that matter, was from outside of India. Mother Teresa, take her for example. She was revered, and I only studied in
Absolutely.
Catholic institutions. There was never even a thought in my mind that she was capable of anything, such as conversions or whatever she's been accused of today. And even those conversations actually emerged from the UK when Christopher Hitchens and Dr.
Yep.
Arup Chatterjee, both UK citizens, actually started speaking about her. Similar with Gandhi, I remember doing an episode with Abhijit Chavda just a few months ago ahead of Gandhi Jayanti, and I did not have the courage. I was very skeptical because Gandhi is a no-go zone. You cannot touch Gandhi, otherwise you'll be done. People are going to
Mm,
disown you.
mm,
But I remembered there was a resistance from African students somewhere in East Africa
yeah,
where they actually pelted and vandalized a lot of these Gandhi statues. And then
yeah.
I was curious to know why. And then I started reading about it. But we don't have enough of that push here in India because of fearing repercussions, perhaps of being, socially
Mm.
outcast.
I think in
But this
India
is
we
where
do
your
become
technology
what's.
is going to help you, right? Yes, Saurabh.
No, so go ahead, Arshaji. It's fine.
This is where the technology is going to help because you have alternative media channels coming up, you have alternative textbooks coming up. Children these days are this is the upside of the pandemic. Because I've been in the education system for a long time. Children, Indian children have this this habit of writing my favorite person Mother Teresa without even getting into it. But that's changing because you have these short clips on YouTube, you have these short clips coming up, you have alternative these learning apps coming up, and children have started questioning. Even in colleges, the debates are centering a tremendous change of topics where you couldn't even go before. Religion was out of the question, politics was out of the question, but today you're actually sitting down and you want to debate. You want to understand why Bacha Khan was left. Why didn't Gandhi listen to the frontier Gandhi, and why Bacha Khan said, "You've left us to the wolves"? Why did we give up Balochistan? If we keep talking about the Jammu massacre, what about the Mirpur massacre at the exact same time, where the PUJK leader actually got up and apologized to the Hindus there? It's a documented fact. So, technology is where it's going to do. Like I said, I keep saying this is the golden age of Islam, actually, this 21st century, because
Yeah.
today every verse, every hadith, every uncomfortable truth is on the tips of your fingers, right? Nobody can shut you down and say, "Okay, it is written in the Quran, and so you can't go there and you'll be committing blasphemy. It's sacrilege. You'll be beheaded."
Mm.
You can't do that. You have to justify. Muslims have been cornered today. Problematic verses being, and they can't even stop the non-Muslims from getting into this sphere, right? So this is where your technology is going to help you in getting your actual history forward, getting our actual history forward, right, Sol?
We need. I would love to see as many books about Gandhi from Ramachandra Guha, etc., as about Jinnah. Where are those books? Where are the
Yeah.
books about the true divider in chiefs of our great nation? You won't see them because he Jinnah is part of that elite cabal that cannot be touched, cannot be impugned, and there is a problem there because there is a great lesson that needs to be learned from the world to understand just how damaging Jinnah was, but he's still revered. With Gandhi, if you want to say it as it is, he was a sellout, and it was convenient to be a sellout, and the left doesn't understand that even if, as you said, Sharon, even if you are to applaud him for his efforts, he is still criticised. Even in the UK, his bust was daubed with graffiti, and he was actually one was beheaded in the US for the same reason under the Black Lives Matter proclamation. So, if we are going to be so sensitive about our heroes, then why not be proud about those that really count? We might as well go on a PR offensive the way Islam and Muslims have done over the last 30 years and be proud of our heritage. We are still
Absolutely.
afraid of what Western outlets say about us, and that time must end.
Before
Paradoxically,
we wrap,
Pakistan has come up with critiques of Jinnah and all. Paradoxically,
That's
ironically,
a strange
but
thing,
we
yeah.
still have Ramchandra Guha, singing praises of what is that?
yeah.
India before Gandhi,
In fact,
India after
there are a
Gandhi.
lot of videos coming from Pakistan, especially after the Nupur incident, where a lot of these Maulanas are justifying what Nupur said, and they said there's absolutely nothing wrong. Why this overreaction? And all of this is overlooked. Sometimes we actually give Pakistan more heat than they perhaps deserve, but there is a section of people that's extremely rational even in Pakistan, and those voices go unheard.
My theory is the more repression there is, the more you have enlightenment. This is everywhere. You just see Iran for that matter. Iran is producing phenomenal reformers and dissenters and critics, and it's amazing the way it's happening. Turkey, for that matter, Turkey leads in dissenting, and
Yeah.
Egypt, and the more repression there is, the more of enlightenment values develop. Indian Muslims are complicit in the freedom that they are provided in India. This is my theory. That is why we tend to live in this cocoon that everything is fine and we are oppressed, and what I call the oppression of Olympics, that the Hindus
Mm.
are oppressing us. uh, the more repression you have, like you have it in Afghanistan or Pakistan, phenomenal writers, phenomenal critics and dissenters.
I think Muslims also in India must be furious when they are communalized, as if they are,
Yeah.
a specific group of people with no agency. So when Zubair is gets a headline talking about how sad it is that he has been arrested because he is a Muslim, and yet we talk about two customers killing a Hindu. Muslims should be enraged that their interests are being communalized for the efforts of the left wing. Muslims are, have a diverse set of beliefs. They argue amongst themselves. They live their lives as they want to live them. Why then should they be lazily dumped into one basket where all of their requirements and needs are supposed to be unilateral? So that's what's happened
Absolutely.
here in the UK. But on the other hand, Muslims do not raise their voice enough to talk about themselves and their individual aspects and their stances and their lifestyles. So that PR offensive is lacking all around the world. And instead, who speaks for them? It's the hardliners and the fundamentalists. And that paradoxically gives more energy to white supremacy, to the critics, the people who we need to be worried about, simply because there isn't that exciting marketplace of ideas that someone like Majid Nawaz would like to promote, for example. There hasn't been that Damascene moment where Muslims around the world can debate their religion and their history and their culture and civilization. Um, and that's being overshadowed. So that's something we need to see more often going forward. And if Saudi Arabia is so enlightened now, why don't they lead the way?
And before we wrap up, what's the truest form of justice that can happen in the case of Kanhaiya Lal? And what's the way forward from here? Because honestly, even I'm tired of having these debates. I wish that we couldn't have these conversations now and then, but unfortunately, these incidents keep on recurring from time to time.
Right now, I think we are crowdfunding to help his family. I know personal loss. I know it's the family that is left with, and he was, I think, the sole bread earner. It's a wide, nothing will be able to compensate it. I think the case has been handed over to the NIA, though I'm not sure what exactly the NIA is going to do. It is a terror act of terror, but more so, it's for the community elders and the Muslims, the ulama, which have to step forward. As I said, I'm
Yes.
yet to see any speech coming up about this whole culture of blasphemy and this taking offense, and why these two brazenly thought that they had to take it upon themselves. And right now, that's the first thing. The law will take its course, I'm sure, and Indian courts are amazing in that thing. Uh, but I am also waiting for repercussions, because it's understandable the anger, the resentment in the neighbors. As I said, uh, very delicate situation, very fragile. There have been appeals for peace, but we all know how long that can hold on. So that's what the main concern is right now.
I think there
Yeah.
is an international angle to this as well, which is what the NIA also took the
There has
case
been a
up for. But
connection
we'll
to
have
the
to see.
Barelvi outfit, the Pakistani Barelvi outfit. There has been a
Right.
connection, but it's still under investigation. Yes.
Right. So we'll have to
Yeah.
wait and watch what happens there. Saurav, your closing words, and then we'll
Yes,
wrap up the
as
session.
Arshia mentioned, we cannot combat Islamist terror if we do not name it. That is the same in India, it is the same in the West, all around the world. It is an extremely complex, damaging, and dangerous philosophy, but it must be explored, named, dissected, and analyzed for us to combat it. To to ensure that these individuals meet the justice of the law is one thing. To call out their behavior and their cry for further jihad terror, we cannot ignore that. We cannot ignore the message that they have portrayed. We cannot ignore the threat that underlines, and we cannot allow blasphemy to become a two-tier legal system that exists in Indian society when it shouldn't. Above all, we must preserve freedom of speech. It's protected under the constitution. We must understand that in a pluralistic society like India, we have the right to disagree, we have the right to blaspheme, and that should not be held at the point of a knife, it should not be held at the point of a gun. We must call out even those who resort to stone pelting after such a disgusting terroristic act. So I would say that going forward, we must take control of the narratives, fight the narratives, call out duplicity when it comes to academic circles and the newspapers, which I'm seeing. I'm happy that I'm seeing this. But on the ground, we need to hear it from the source. We need to hear it from the BJP. We need to hear it from Amit Shah. We need to hear it from Narendra Modi ji that this does not represent India. This does not represent Islam. And the way forward is to call out the enemy and describe it and name it for what it is.
Thank you so much, Arshia ji and Saurav, for joining me today. This has been a very good conversation. And since you're doing the campaign, we would love to, put the campaign's link in the description box below. And I appeal to all of our viewers to actually go there and contribute and help Kanhaiya Lal's family as much as you can. And we will wait for the investigation to come out, and we'll see what they have to say about this. I'm sure there is a much more deeper angle to this than what it seems on the media. Thank you so much. I hope you have a very good evening, and
Thank
namaste.
you. Namaste.
Namaskar. Thank you very much for inviting me.